Formula One racing driver Michael Schumacher, one of the greatest drivers of all time.
Greatest driver in Formula One history.
In critical condition.
The Formula One legend.
What does perfection in Formula One actually look like? Not hype, numbers, execution. In 2004, a 35-year-old Michael Schumacher turned Grand Prix, racing into a routine he won the first 5 races of the season. Then began a relentless march that felt unfair. You know the stat everyone whispers about.
Michael Schumacher, as they go down towards field, he wants through.
But we're not there yet. We're going to unpack how a driver became a system.
Not all of his rivals made it easy for him in 2004, either on.
The F2004 was a weapon, sure, but why did Rubens only take 2 wins in the same car while Schumacher suffocated the field?
But again, Montoya loses speed in the middle part, and here comes Michael. Michael gets back into Montoya, and Schumacher retakes the lead. A round of applause from the Ferrari mechanics.
Stay, because the answer rewrites how you measure greatness, and it starts with how a driver turns resources into a process you can't derail.
Brilliance from Michael Schumacher. He knew that he forced Montoya into turn 1 to break lead.
So let's talk about the moment the whole thing wakes up. Setup. The apex predator wakes. We think we know perfection in F1. Big budget, wind tunnel, a fat horsepower number. But what happens when the driver turns all of that into a repeatable process you can't derail? That's where early 2004 lands. We're not talking about a hot streak. We're talking about a man who arrives after a 6th title, looks at a new set of rules that say one engine must survive the entire weekend, and says, fine, let's build a system that never breaks. Ferrari rolls out the F2004. Sleek, stiff, and ruthless over a stint. Under the 1 engine per weekend rule, you can't throw an engine at qualifying and pray it holds till Sunday. You need drivability. You need stability across fuel loads and tire wear. That's where this car lives. It doesn't just peak, it maintains. And in the hands of a 35-year-old who's seen every trick, it becomes terrifying. But dominance like this always cracks, right? Heat destroys tires. Strategy gets messy. A late safety car blows up your pit windows. Some weekends, the track rubber's in strange and your compound falls off a cliff. That's where seasons die. Except, weirdly, that isn't where this one goes. Because the intent isn't to defend a crown, it's to remove variables. Schumacher steps into Friday practice like an auditor. Systems check. Entry stability. Mid-corner balance with a full tank. Launch mapping for a rubbered-in grid versus a dusty one. Every decision built around controlling the race from the moment the lights go out. Starts matter. The first stint matters more. And clean air? That's the oxygen he's hoarding from everyone else. Here's the core. Ferrari's package isn't chasing the biggest number on a dyno sheet. It's chasing repeatable grip. Bridgestone shows up with tires that hold their window over a long run when managed correctly. The engine philosophy backs it up. Not the loudest peak, but a V10 that delivers torque you can lean on lap after lap.
It's the final Grand Prix of Michael Schumacher's career. He's going out fighting. He's racing with Raikkonen, who's trying to block him into turn 1. Schumacher's having none of it. They're side by side. Don't collide, guys. Please don't collide. Raikkonen gives him room.
Especially at the exits. You get traction you can trust, so you can push on outlaps, then lift off the tire a fraction and keep the average speed high. That's how you suffocate rivals over an hour and a half. Think of it like a sniper. You don't spray. You select targets. 1 lap in qualifying that pins track position. The launch. The first outlap after the first stop. The delta to the undercut threat. The sprint into clean air when traffic is coming out of pit lane. Each shot chosen, each shot landed. The rest is just breathing, and this isn't guesswork in the heat of battle. In the background, Ross Brawn is mapping probabilities days before the race. If there's a safety car between a given window, there's a branch. If the track temp nudges up in qualifying, there's a wing tweak and tire pressure set ready to go. Luca Baldessari sits in the strategy room, juggling live gaps and traffic models, not reacting to chaos, but preempting it. You see this level of planning pay off later at places like Magny-Cours, proof that the playbook isn't a myth, it's operational. Now, if the car alone decided this, Rubens Barrichello would be feasting on Sundays. He's quick, he's clean, he gets the same machinery. But we start to see the split. Comparable sector times across a lap? Sure. But over a stint, when the tires begin to move and the fuel burns off, Schumacher bends the curve in his favor. Outlaps are on the edge without tipping over it. In-laps are balanced fast enough to make the stop window work, not so desperate they wreck the tires. And in traffic, he avoids time sinks like they're landmines. That's the driver delta. You get the picture. You can call this ruthless, you can call it boring. But it's repeatable. And that's the scary part. He's not reacting to chaos. He removes it before it arrives. A late yellow? There's a branch for that. A blister forming on the rears? Adjust the brake balance, shift the entry, and cool the carcass over 3 laps without bleeding the gap. Precision over panic. So when we talk about the F2004 being a monster, sure, the chassis is planted and the engine's smooth, and the tires love long runs. But the real story is the loop. Driver, tires, engine, pit wall. Feedback in, adjustment out. Every lap a micro decision, every micro decision stacking into control. That's how you turn a season into inevitability. And once that loop hums, the hunt starts. No noise, no drama. Just targets lined up across the calendar, different tracks, different heat, different loads. 5 of them, one by one. How do you break a championship in 2 months? You don't. You starve it. You take away hope one Sunday at a time until everyone else is just fighting each other for leftovers. That's the game. And in early 2004, 5 very different circuits turned into the same story. Albert Park. Schumacher sticks it on a pole and leads every lap. Fastest lap in the bag. Barrichello in second. Lights out, clean launch, first stint controlled like a metronome. When you lead every lap at round 1, you set a tone for the year, then Sepang. Malaysia is a...
And also then go straight past one of the, must be a Heidfeld struggling.
high-speed S-curves, humidity that crushes engines and drivers. Schumacher starts from the front again and wins again. Different conditions, same execution. Ferrari, short fuels when needed, gives him clean air. He pushes hard for 1 or 2 laps, then cools the tire just enough to stretch the stint. Rivals try to respond, but they're reacting to his windows. Bahrain, inaugural race, new circuit. Schumacher adapts instantly. Pole, fastest lap, controls the race throughout. The lead only changed around pit cycles, Barrichello P2. When a driver can grab a brand new track and treat it like home, you feel the gap in processing speed. Imola. San Marino is tight, strategic. Schumacher doesn't start from pole here, Jenson Button does, but he still wins. When he doesn't control the start, he builds the race in pieces. Ferrari plays the windows, times the stops, and he nails the in-laps without cooking the tires for the outlaps. Every time the window opens, Ferrari turns the screw. Spain is the grind test. Barcelona punishes weak front ends and sloppy balance. Schumacher wins from pole and seals 5 from 5. Barrichello is right there again, fast in sectors and second at the flag, but you can feel the split. Over a race distance, Schumacher squeezes every variable into his box: starts, in-laps, outlaps, fuel, traffic. Through those 5 races, the pattern becomes obvious. Ferrari uses stint length like a lever. If rivals look threatening, they trim fuel to open an undercut, hand him clean air, and let the outlap pace break resistance. If the field strings out, they lengthen the window, deny safety car chaos, and keep him out of fights he doesn't need. This is where you start to notice the Barrichello contrast. He's fast, he matches sectors, and he's finishing right behind. Second in Australia, second in Bahrain, second in Spain. Same car, same playbook, yet the margins over a stint tilt one way. When the tires cycle, Schumacher settles into a repeatable rhythm quicker. He builds an average that kills you slowly. That's consistency as a weapon. After Spain, it's 5/5. That's oxygen leaving other garages. Teams stop crafting plans to beat him on pure pace. They start waiting for a mistake. But there isn't a pattern of mistakes to exploit. What happens when the machine stutters? We find out in a tunnel.
The VARs are just hitting the ground quite hard, and there is Sato defending heavily against Kimi Räikkönen.
Monaco, tight walls, zero margin, race neutralized under the safety car. Schumacher leads. Montoya sits behind Williams. Schumacher scrubs speed to warm the brakes. Montoya misjudges it. Contact in the tunnel. The Ferrari is wounded. Schumacher retires. The streak dies right there. This is exactly where momentum usually collapses. Public pressure floods in. Rivals smell blood because the aura flickered for a second. When the points leader retires from a winning position at Monaco, the garage normally gets tight. Voices get louder. Fingers point. But Ferrari doesn't unravel. They go small room, closed door, everything on the table. Engineering meeting, reset. You strip the error tree, you rebuild the run plan for Europe, and you come back with the same message: control. If there's a weakness, it gets quarantined. If there's a process miss, it gets fixed by Thursday. Then Nürburgring, European Grand Prix. Schumacher takes the whole weekend and turns it into a clinic. He strings the lap through turn 1 without the front washing wide, places the car over the Schumacher S, and keeps it stable over the curb exits. Just a lap that gives him track position and clean air for Sunday. On race day, it's the calm radio you notice. Short calls, no wasted chatter. Outlaps that are aggressive to the millimeter, not the meter. He doesn't spike the tire temps into a death spiral. Traffic management is the real flex. Ferrari's pit wall threads him into space. He gets clear tarmac, makes the pace. That win matters because of what it says about psychology. You DNF at Monaco while leading, the critics circle, and you answer by deleting doubt within 7 days of track time. It's clinical. The lesson lands. Mistakes don't multiply here. They die instantly. And when opponents see that, they stop counting on momentum swings. It's win number 6 of the season. After 5 straight and a Monaco DNF, he resets the count immediately. You can feel the grid's mood shift. The noise after Monaco had a little bite to it. Finally, a crack. But the answer at the ring hardens the aura again. Driver precision feeding strategy confidence feeding driver freedom. Monaco landed a sting. It broke the run and lit up headlines. But the response at Nürburgring is the part that defines a season like this. Not revenge, not rage, just an immediate return to the process. How do you beat a quick Renault on home turf? You don't chase it, you change the terms. France 2004 at Magny-Cours. Renault on Michelin's is sharp off the line, light on its feet in the twisty middle. Track position is king. But Ferrari shows up with a different religion. Conventional wisdom screams 3 stops. But the short lap at Magny-Cours messes with the calculus. The pit delta is small. You can pit more often if your outlaps are lethal and your inlaps are clean. Ross Brawn runs the playbook, and Luca Baldessari greenlights the 4-stop idea that week. They go 4, not for fun, for average pace, for control of air. Here's the gambit. Short fuel him, make the car a knife, hit your targets early. When you stop more times, you concede stationary seconds. But you gain rolling speed, lap after lap, because the car is always in its sweet spot. And on a lap that quick, your loss at the pit lane is reduced. The math starts to bend toward aggression. Ferrari manipulates the windows so Renault is always covering the wrong threat. Meanwhile, Schumacher is punching out violent outlaps, braking a foot deeper, but never snapping the rear on corner exit. No wheel spin leaving the box. Precision everywhere. Each pit stop resets the race. Each outlap is a hammer. Each inlap is a scalpel. Because the pit delta is tight, the cost of resetting is low compared to the damage you deal with new tires and less fuel. Renault bites on the second stop timing. Once they react, they're no longer free to run their optimal stint lengths. They're trapped in Ferrari's cadence. You see it in the gaps after each stop. The blue car covers, but the red car materializes ahead, once the windows sink. That's a pre-baked flowchart executed at full speed. Schumacher does the hard parts. The outlaps are savage but tidy. He nails apex speeds without spiking tire temps into a cliff. He builds the gap in fragments because the four-stop strategy only sings if the driver keeps feeding it those gains. He doesn't miss. The crew has zero tolerance for chaos. Stops look copy-paste. And on exit, Schumacher never wastes the first 20 meters. He's straight, he's planted, the throttle application is smooth enough to protect the rears, and yet it's full commitment. Michelin on the Renault is consistent over a long stretch, but Bridgestone on the Ferrari holds a tight operating window that responds beautifully to repeated resets. The four-stop turns the tire life into a series of short, sharp peaks instead of one long compromise. When the final stint settles, track position belongs to Red. The four-stop hands him the race, on Renault's turf, against a car that looked hooked up and a crowd that expected blue on the top step. That's a kill engineered on the whiteboard, then executed with zero ego behind the wheel. This isn't a car wins the day story. It's a driver team brain trust taking a rulebook, a lap length, and a tire curve, and demolishing assumptions. You don't outdrag a rival like that. You change the fight. When the game shifts from invention to validation, it lands at the Ardennes. What's more intimidating than a win? A title sealed on a day you don't even need to win. That's the energy at Spa-Francorchamps in late summer 2004. And Michael Schumacher walks out with P2 and still locks the World Championship. Not flashy, brutal in its own way. On this Sunday, Kimi Räikkönen and McLaren nail the win. Rubens Barrichello brings the other Ferrari home P3. Schumacher? He doesn't need the top step. He needs a number. He hits it. Title done with 4 races to spare. That's rare air. Early clinches almost never happen because seasons are messy. You get DNFs from tiny failures. Safety cars that trigger chaos. And yet, the 2004 grid ran into something colder. A points machine that never lets the dice roll. When you rarely DNF, you don't let the season breathe. You suffocate it. Only 2002 wrapped earlier for him. Back then, he clinched with 6 still to run. 2004 gets close enough to feel ridiculous. And it happens at Spa, which fits the arc almost too neatly. His first F1 win? Here, in 1992, in Benetton. 12 years later, on the same ribbon of tarmac, he sealed a 7th World Championship. Milestone on top of milestone. Look at Spa's result in isolation, and it reads, ordinary. Second place, cool, move on. But the subtext is savage. Points efficiency beats spectacle. You don't need fireworks when you've removed volatility. That meant Spa could be a measured drive. Manage risk. Bank what you need. Finishing second doesn't make headlines like a win, but it knocks the air out of the room. Opponents see the number, realize the gap is now untouchable, and the psyche shifts. After Spa, nobody asks if they can catch him. Spa shows the difference between domination and control. Domination is loud, control is quiet. On a track where weather flips in minutes, Schumacher plays probability. He doesn't chase Kimi at any cost. He reads the race and locks down exactly what the title requires. That restraint is part of why this season feels clinical. Räikkönen's win there isn't a footnote. It's proof that even in a year like this, the field had teeth on the right day. But the worst part for everyone else? It didn't matter. The big trophy was already secured. From that 1992 breakthrough to the 2004 seal, Spa was a mirror for Schumacher's growth. Raw speed to relentless execution. A driver who once had to prove he belonged, now compressing a season into inevitability. Dominance is not just speed, it's removing probability. That's what 2004 perfected. Take out the random, delete the chaos. Leave no escape route for rivals hoping the season turns into a coin toss.
Yes, it does mean a lot to me.
Spa's second place is the cleanest example because it's a title without drama. Just math, discipline, and a signature on the record book. And stats don't lie, but they don't explain themselves either. 13 wins from 18. That's a 72% hit rate in a championship that's supposed to chew you up. 148 points on the old system. Barrichello next with 114. On paper, it looks like an avalanche. But the question that never dies, car or driver? Let's pull the thread. 15 podiums, 10 fastest laps, 8 poles, led 683 laps. Only 1 retirement. Those aren't random trophy cabinet fillers. They're a pattern. Pole wasn't a flex. It was the first chokehold. When he missed pole, the race pace covered the gap. Fastest laps landed exactly when strategy needed them. On the outlap, on the lap before a stop, clearing traffic from pit exit. Now, the Barrichello contrast. Same chassis, same Bridgestones, same refueling era, same pit crew. 2 wins. Clean driver, quick over a lap. That's your driver delta in plain daylight. If it's only the car, the win column splits more evenly. But it didn't. The gap lived in the margins that never show up in a spec sheet. Schumacher's single laps weren't wild. They were accurate. Tiny corrections, minimal scrub, no desperate saves that heat the tires at the wrong moment. That's why 8 poles mattered. They were surgical entries into Sundays where he owned clean air from turn 1. Then race pace. Think elastic, not static. He'd press hard right after the stop, feel the tires hit the edge of the window, then back off 2/10 to keep the compound alive. A lap or 2 later, hit again. The average stays high while everyone else rides a boom and bust curve. Team synergy kept the machine honest. Pit stops were near flawless. Strategy calls came with pre-modeled branches. If the window shifted by a lap, they shifted with it. No flailing, no coin flips disguised as bravery. And remember that single retirement? That's the oxygen line. 1 DNF in a year where rivals were dealing with mechanical gremlins meant he didn't leave the door open for probability to sneak in. Every Sunday he finished, he banked heavy points. That's how 148 becomes inevitable rather than dramatic. We can argue all day about the F2004 being a cheat code. It was a masterpiece. But 2 drivers sat in that masterpiece. One won 13 races, one won 2. The split comes from qualifying precision, elastic race pace, pit lane execution, and 0 hesitation. This was the sweet spot of age and skill. 35 means a full playbook in your head and enough speed left in your legs to execute. Think of a professional safecracker, not sparks and chaos. The quiet one who knows the mechanism by touch. Schumacher in 2004 was that. Every click mattered. Every turn was measured. By the time you noticed, the vault was empty. The wall of numbers isn't a brag sheet. It's a portrait of control. Wins, poles, laps led, fastest laps, podiums, the microscopic DNF count, each stat points to the same truth. You're looking at a system. A driver at 35 with peak experience, peak fitness, and 0 doubt about how to bend a race to his will. That's why the 72% win rate doesn't feel like a fluke. It feels inevitable. Car or driver? The argument dies right here. The car gave him range. He turned range into certainty. What do we call a season where rivals never see a mistake they can use? Terrifying. And yes, 2004 sits in that category with a cold grin. The F2004 gets the museum lighting, the coffee table books, the all-time label. But the thing that turned it from great car to inevitability was a 35-year-old who refused to give you a tiny crack to pry open. Week after week, the system held. Let's talk about that system without romantic fluff. Discipline first. Schumacher didn't yo-yo his life around the calendar. He made the calendar work around marginal gains. Sleep, nutrition, simulator rhythm before sim rhythm was even cool. And that relentless feedback loop with the engineers that bored everyone else to tears and won him time on Sundays. Conditioning mattered in an era where cars ran heavy fuel and V10s demanded proper necks and lungs. He didn't fade in the last 10 laps. He squeezed. The narrative tries to hand everything to the car. That's lazy. What separated 2004 was the human layer.
Not then had the ideal entry to the corner. He's probably off the throttle too long. Michael cut back to the right and just drove around him.
A driver who never let pace turn into waste.
Another
a 5 or 6 miles an hour advantage. Now Raikkonen's going to give a lot of heat to Juan Pablo Montoya. Yeah, but look at Michael. He's really beginning to pull away. He's definitely got the speed advantage here.
A driver who never let pace turn into waste. No reckless dashes for a fastest lap that ruined the next stint. No panic into traffic that cost him a pit window. He treated risk like a budget. You spend only when the return is guaranteed. There's also the trust layer inside Ferrari. Strategy isn't clever if the driver can't cash the checks. 2004 lived on trust. Car setup aligned to long-run stability. Pit wall timing aligned to known execution on in-laps and out-laps. That's why the bold calls landed. Everyone operated like the other would be perfect, and most weekends, they were close enough. People will point at other eras with fast cars and say, see, similar dominance. Sure, but few seasons manufactured certainty. Senna had raw shock value. Prost had the book of efficiency. Lauda had industrial-level clarity. 2004 took pieces from all three and sanded them into a seamless edge. The difference isn't top speed, it's predictability. Rivals didn't go to the grid thinking, if he messes up turn 1, we're in. They went thinking, we need a safety car, a slow stop, and weather roulette. That's not hope. That's a prayer. 35 means you've lived through the wars. You know where the silly fights happen and how to dodge them. You don't get dragged into ego battles with a hot lap merchant on worn rubber. You leave space where others would stick a nose and break a wing. That restraint looks boring on a highlight reel. It's lethal over 18 rounds. Discipline wasn't performative. It showed up in details you barely see. Brake release that doesn't spike the fronts. A throttle pickup that settles the rear instead of lighting it up. Micro adjustments on the wheel that keep the platform calm over curbs so the tires stay in range. You add those choices over hours and you get exactly what 2004 looked like. Weekends that feel pre-written because the variables were managed, not ignored. Anyway, I'm not trying to be mean here, but the greatest car did the work, take misses the point. Rubens had the same hardware and real speed. He took wins, yes, but he didn't turn weekends into inevitability at the same rate. That final conversion, pole into launch, launch into stint, stint into pit window, window into clear air, that was the driver. Think of a metronome set a fraction faster than the world's best drummer. Not flashy fills, not chaos. Just a beat that never drops and slowly wrecks your timing until your own song falls apart. That's 2004. The opposition tried to improvise and the metronome didn't care. It just kept ticking, faster than you could play cleanly. 2004 becomes the benchmark for driver supremacy, not because every lap was fireworks, but because every lap served a purpose. No vanity, no wasted risk. That's mastery. If you're into this kind of ruthless craft, make sure you subscribe, will you? We do the nerd work so you can watch F1 like an insider, not a highlight hunter. This is 35-year-old Schumacher at his most dangerous. Untouchable, relentless, systematic. He didn't just win, he made winning feel inevitable, and that mood crushed opponents long before the checkered flag. 2004 wasn't a fast car story. It was a driver turning speed into certainty every single weekend. No drama, no bailout luck, just control. Your turn. Drop your pick for the closest rival season in the comments and why. Prost 84, Vettel 2013, Hamilton 2019. Make the case. Then check our deep dive on the F2004's design quirks, tiny details, huge gains. You get the picture. Thanks for watching Pure Kino. See you in the next one.